Hi, welcome back. I'm Alison. In this video we're going to be doing an Ask Me Anything. I'll be answering your questions, your astrology related questions. I do have a small group of people on my panel and we're going to be talking about astrology and answering your questions. If you like the sound of this video, please do give it a like, subscribe and tap the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. In this Ask Me Anything video today, I have a couple of astrologers as well. I have Norma, she has a podcast and the link is going to be down below. You can follow her podcast, go and give her some love. And I also have Dianne, she has a YouTube channel as well and she works with astrology and tarot. Go and give her some love, links below. I also want to give a shout out to my moderator Claire and to Devin for participating in this video. I really want to thank you for your support at this time. So I'm planning to do more Ask Me Anything videos, perhaps once a month or whatever, and it does depend on how many questions I get in from you, my followers. So if you have a question astrology related, you can ask it below or you can email me at starzology@gmail.com and I will put it into our next Ask Me Anything video and I'll be able to answer your questions in greater detail. Sounds good? I thought so. All right, so let's get started on our Ask Me Anything. Well, hello there.
Hello.
Hello. We've got a few people coming in and, oh, hey, Norma. Hi, Devin.
Hi,
hey.
Devin. Hi, Norma.
I think Diane's got to
Look at that view.
Yeah, that's a nice view you got there, Norma.
It is a pretty good view. I won't lie. I thought you think it's a fake background. It is not. It is the actual background.
No green screen here.
Nope.
Diane.
Hello, Diane.
Hi.
Okay. So I'm super glad that everyone's here. We were expecting a few more who had RSVP. However, time moves on. So I'm very happy to have you all here today. This is going to be like, it's going to be my first Ask Me Anything, AMA is apparently the hashtag for these things, where I'm going to be answering the questions about astrology and maybe some questions or confusion you might have about something or other or anything like that. Of course, I'll also answer any other questions about anything in particular, but I'm really going to be answering questions on astrology. And we do actually have a couple already from some that was emailed to us and came in on YouTube, which Claire's going to be reading to us. And then we'll certainly get to everyone in the audience. If you've got a good question there, we'd love to discuss it. Okay. So if you want to say anything, you can go in the chat and Claire's monitoring the chat for us and we can go from there. Okay.
Yeah. Or feel free to just chime in if you'd like.
I'm in.
Yeah. So we'll just start with the first simple question here. That came from Leslie M. And it just says, what if I don't know my birth time? Can I still have my chart done?
Yeah, now that's quite a good question for people coming into astrologists to start with. What if I don't have my birth time? Can I still get my chart done? Now, ideally, if all good astrologers will then cast the chart for noon on the day of the birthday, because by doing it that way, you can only be 12 hours out at the most, and also you're picking up the kind of the midpoint of where the planets could be. When you do a noon chart, you cannot use the ascendant or the houses because we don't know the time, so we don't know which way the chart would have actually been placed at that moment. However, we can use the planets in the sign, excluding the moon, the planets in the sign. So if you've got the sun in Gemini and the moon is, well, not the moon, or Venus in Virgo or something, you can then use those positions because virtually those planets won't have moved much within the 12-hour time period. And also you can use the aspects between the planets, but you can't use the aspects to the angles, the ascendant or the midheaven. So what we have here is we have a situation where normally in a birth chart, that would be 100% of your knowledge, but because we don't have a time and we can't use the houses, we were almost reducing it down to 60% of possible information. But of that 60%, it's 100% correct. So when you've got planets in signs and planets with aspects, that is correct. We're totally ignoring a whole chunk of stuff that that we don't know the answers to. So it's not as though we're saying, this is kind of what I think your chart is. We can definitely say, I've got 60% of the information and I can interpret your chart from that point. Have any of you done any charts without birth times?
No.
Requests for them, but yeah, I've had requests for them. But do you also take into consideration, what you think the person might look like depending on their ascendant?
But now I think now you're getting into rectification, because if we say, oh, air signs are tall, water signs are short, I think that's a challenge if you don't have the time, right? So with a noon chart, you cannot really give a stab at what you think that ascendant might be. Yeah. I think if you're going to be going one step further and deciding you're going to have a go at doing a rectification on the chart, you then need to look at much greater factors. And typically, that would be the solar arc directed conjunctions to the ascendant going back through their life. So you would say, well, when did you get married? When was your first child born? And major turning points to pin down those months. And then you could technically discover an ascendant. Personally, I'm not a fan of rectification, but I know a lot of astrologers use it. Yeah.
Great. And the next question here is from Stan. It says that I'm trying to learn astrology by myself, but I'm not sure what to look at first in the chart because it's so complicated. Do you have any advice on where to start?
Well, so that's quite a good question, because you see a chart for the first time. Well, Norma.
You want to know what I think? It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. Sorry, Stan.
The first thing you really want to learn about and know and understand is the ascendant. I think that's the most important thing in a chart, and you would do well to learn your three main points. The ascendant sign, it's written right here somewhere, the ascendant sign, your sun sign, and then your moon sign. They're going to be the three things that you want to look at first. And when you go through your books, and hopefully you've got some books if you're learning astrology, and you would focus in on those 3 points first. They're known as the triumvirate of your chart, and they really do have an awful lot to say about who you are. So I would definitely look at ascendant, sun, and moon.
Devin's looking like he seems unsure of his ascendant based on his little...
I also wasn't sure on how to spell ascendant, apparently.
It's okay, we are... Well, it's good you're trying.
Okay, so there you have it. So don't worry, the code is ASC for ascendant if you just want the short form for ascendant. So you don't need to worry about spelling. I too can spell Sagittarius and things like that. I would double G and all the rest of it. So I wouldn't worry so much about that.
Well, I think the fact that Stan is, wondering about astrology without any formal training tells us a lot about his chart.
Well, yes, we're saying that you should.
I'm guessing there's nothing in the 3rd house, there's nothing in the 9th house, and perhaps a lack of interest in detail. I'm giving you a bad time. It's Sunday, man. You don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. Feel free to mute me at any moment.
Yeah. So what can we say going on from that? Take a class or a few, learn the basics, get a grip on the basics. What we like to call the 4 building blocks of astrology. That's the signs, the planets, the houses, and the aspects. Get to know what that is, what they are, and what they mean, and that will stand you in good stead. I often use this as the analogy that if all astrologers need to know the 4 things: the signs, planets, houses, and aspects. And it's much like being a medical doctor, that at the end, when they've gone through their medical training, they know these 4 things and they can save your life.
Right.
But then particular doctors go on to specialize in brain surgery or anesthesiology or dermatology, and they then become specialists within their field. But in the end, they can all just save your life if they saw you on the side of the road. So those are your basic stuff that you really need to get under your belt. So yeah, maybe some classes would come in handy. Or, sorry, was it Stan? Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe, do we have a question on the floor here, or the deck perhaps?
I do have one.
You do?
So yeah, I know that with relationships, your signs do mean something, right? As far as compatibility. So I'm a Virgo myself. My spouse is a Leo. I've heard that that's conflicting. Is there anything I should be worried about?
Well, that's quite a good question, because you're just looking at your sun sign. So you've got the sun in Virgo, and I'm assuming your wife's got the, what did you say, the sun's in Leo there. So you're just looking at two particular signs through your sun lens, if you will. Whereas if you considered the three things I was just talking about, the ascendant signs, that would be interesting to see what your ascendant sign compatibility was, because you might find there's some better connection there. And also you can look at your moon sign compatibility to see where what the connections are, because you're just taking two features out of a chart, of which there's, what is it, 1,400 pieces. They're just, but I get it. They're just the two things you know when you're an absolute beginner. You know your sun sign, and that's all you've got to go on. And this can be why, although you say it's incompatible, and generally Leo and Virgo are not really the best of friends, but there will be mitigating factors by the other placements of the other planets in your chart and the ascendant.
Okay.
Do you know what your
So there's a lot more than just the sun signs to take into account there.
exactly?
Yeah. Okay.
Part of it. So the knack is to understand your chart. Do you know what your ascendant is, Devin, or not really?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Well,
No.
maybe
I'd still have to even call up my mom to figure out what time I was born. So we're a bit far off of that one. Maybe she'll get back to me if I email.
That sounds good. Yeah. But I think everyone else knows their ascendant. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's a good thing. Yeah, there's a question about Norma's ascendant.
There is no question about my ascendant.
Okay.
Wow.
My guess would be Aries.
Not at all. Not even close. No. I mean, kind of, no. There's no question about my ascendant.
No.
So, but you know, Devin, if I may, Alison.
Yes, please do.
Okay. Yeah. No, all I was going to say is what I say to my clients is when you're reading your horoscope, you know, like in the paper, right? Like if you do that on a daily or whatever, read your sun sign, which is Virgo. And then when you figure out your ascendant, read that as well, because not all sun signs are created equal. You've probably met other Virgos that are nothing like you. And the reason is because their ascendant is different. So I say both. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the advice, guys.
Yeah, and sign up for a course with Alison. That would be my other suggestion.
Probably a good idea. I've heard she's pretty.
Oh,
No, I would believe the word you're looking for is amazing.
Actually, if I can recall, I think it's world class.
yes. Accurate.
Okay. But everyone else knows their ascendant. Do you want to share your ascendants with us then, ladies? Dianne?
I'm Aries.
Oh, okay. And of course, Norma is?
Pisces ascendant.
Oh, okay.
Sun sign. Yeah.
Pisces. And Claire, we know you are a
Scorpio.
Scorpio. There you have it. You see, because she's actually written up there, so that helped. Earlier on, we got that organised for.
Should we compare like sun, moon, and ascendant?
Well, let's go for it. So, where's your sun then, Dianne?
My sun and moon are both in Capricorn. My ascendant is Aries.
Wow. Do you want to speak to us a little bit about that?
Business, and pushy.
Okay, sounds wonderful. So Devin, we just know your Virgo sun. That's all we've got so far, isn't it?
I did get my time. If that helps, we can do like a live one. Okay.
Not that an astrologer would say this, but TMI.
I don't know what I need to give up and what I don't. Now you've got two of my security questions.
Good joke. Good joke.
Yes, good joke.
For all the viewers out there.
Devin,
great.
be able to help you with this.
Ontario.
You see, all the other ladies are going to do it as well, so that's the tricky bit.
Not fun.
Oh yeah. Oh, hello. Hello, Devin.
I got
I
Sagittarius.
like to make a face when I see it. Oh no, I don't. I'm
just close the books.
I'm going to share my screen with you.
Ascendant. What did you guys get? Oh,
There we
look.
have it.
Okay. Way to go, Alison.
Got a whole chart.
Devin, Things you didn't know but were too afraid to ask. So let me tell you, so your ascendant is over here, and this is Sagittarius.
Okay.
Make a note. Make a note for next time, because you're always going to ask you that question. Interesting, Sagittarius.
Is it less of a reaction now then, Norma?
Oh no, same reaction.
Okay.
Kidding.
We get it. Yep.
Yeah, so the sun is over here in Virgo. That's what we're saying. That's the symbol there for Virgo. And then the moon is down here.
In Pisces.
The moon is in Pisces. Yes.
So what do you do? Are you a writer or something?
I do videography, communications in general. So I do videography, photography. I do copywriting. I do website building. Just kind of like an assistant for digital comms.
Lots of communication. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Would you like to share with us, Dianne, why you asked that question?
I'm not sure. I just looked at the sun in Virgo in the 9th house. To me, speaks to writing, publishing, shining in that area of communication. Could be higher education. That's just what came out for me.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good clue. I agree with you there. You know,
Is Mercury most elevated planet?
it looks
Close between that and Mars. It's close.
16 and no, it's Mercury. Yes.
Yeah, it's Mercury high. So communication, right?
Yeah. So what we're saying there is that Mercury, this purple one, this is the most elevated planet. This is the highest point in your chart, and it is in the 9th house, as Dianne specifically did say. It's probably final dispositor, unless I don't know. I haven't got time to look at the whole chart, but it's strongly placed. So communications and writing and using your mind, teaching, what else? Handiwork, or dealing and buying and selling. All of those things would be strongly influenced by that Mercury position, which is, really quite interesting.
It is.
Thanks for the free advice. I've got a free chart reading.
There's a lot of that here, Devin.
And then I think with the Pisces moon, it feels to me like you could really be on the pulse of what the public might want in regards to how you communicate and what you're communicating. And I think it would soften the way that you communicate so that it would be really palatable to the people.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Awesome.
I'm working in higher education right now too, so you guys are pretty spot on.
We try. Yeah. So there you've got your 3 main points of your chart. So that's great. So I'll email that to you afterwards. Okay. Yeah. So interestingly there. So, and the other 2 ladies, you both calculated that chart, did you? Oh.
Yes, we've been trained.
Like, oh yeah. That's awesome.
It is. It's amazing what actually can be done. Okay, sounds good.
And so what's cool is we actually do have a question here from someone who hasn't made it into the chat today. I'm not sure if they'll be late or if they will show up, but okay. I'm going to read their question anyway so they can refer to it afterwards.
Right.
It's a little wordy, so just be with me here. Okay. So Amaya asked, as a late rising, I often have planets entering the next sign weeks before it enters the house it rules. My question is, how do you interpret or forecast in that case? For example, my descendant is Capricorn at 24 degrees in the 7th house, and Saturn just went into Aquarius, but is still at the very beginning of my 7th house, but rules my 8th house. So how would you interpret or forecast that? In this case.
So that's quite a tricky little question there. So what, she's saying is she's got Capricorn at 25 or something.
24 degrees in the 7th house.
Which is a really busy degree right now.
Mm.
Yes, exactly. And what's happening is Saturn was in there and in Capricorn, and then Saturn then actually just like last week, I think it was, moved into Aquarius. So Saturn has been in her 7th house of marriage and serious relationships for a little while now, and then last week it moved from the Capricorn influence that it has into the Aquarian influence. And of course it did this for everyone, but for her, it's happening in her 7th house.
Mm.
However, as Dianne rightly said, that the actual very sensitive point there of what is it, 27 Capricorn, we've had
24.
24.
Right where Pluto is, and Jupiter's 2 degrees away.
Let me get today's chart up, so I've got my fingertips here. So this is what we have. So at 24 degrees Capricorn and around that area, we've recently had a massive stellium in the sky that has been in position since I think it came in November last year, if I'm not mistaken, the first
December.
of it. I want to say cue Corona, but I'm not going to. However, what's happening is that this is a massive focus, a nub, a hub, a bringing together of massive planetary energy that, for her particular case, is right there on her descendant, which is kind of interesting. I would assume it's happening in her 7th house. So whoever she is, and if she ever does arrive, that'll be great. But otherwise, you can hear afterwards that it's going to create that new relationships that occur for her in the next couple of months will be absolute game changers for her, because she's got that stellium right there on her descendant. And if she happens to be in a relationship, she can expect it to go in different ways to how it has been up until this point. It's like we've been coming along, then we got this burst of energy, and now people have changed in some way. And that's really what it is.
And to even go along with that, Madison had asked, is it true that if you have no planets in the 7th house that you'll never get married or find the person of your dreams?
So for Madison, thank you for the question. So that's not true at all. Many people don't have planets in the 7th house. The 7th house is about marriage and serious commitments and relationships. This is why people are always asking about it. And generally, if you do have planets in your 7th house, it does indicate certain marriages or certain people you are likely to want to marry, and even the number of marriages you are likely to have. But if your 7th house is actually empty, you then have to look to the planet that rules the sign on the cusp of the 7th house and see what its condition is within the chart. So if we happen to know, what was her name, Madison? If we happen to know what Madison's cusp was, we could say which planet she needs to look to in her chart to find out what the condition of her marriage is going to be. And I can attest to this with an empty 7th house myself, and been married for 35 years. You know, people get married. It's not that you won't get married, but it's not where your energy is focused all the time. Yeah, so that's a question you actually get a lot.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the time you get those questions. So if we go back to Devin's chart, because we had this a moment ago, let's nail it there. He also doesn't have anything in his 7th house. But if we look to the ruler of that 7th house, which is Gemini's on the cusp, therefore it's Mercury, which is that planet we were talking about at the top, well engaged, connected to the sun, and with several aspects coming in, that's the indication of the type of person and the type of marriages he's likely to have. Yeah.
Which is?
Well, as I said, on the spot, really. Throw it open.
Yeah.
Mercury's well placed. It's going to be the situation where you're likely to marry someone who is youthful, someone who is talks your language literally. It's got a conjunction to the sun there. What else has it got? Which is a great thing. It's got a semi-sextile, but it's trining Uranus and Neptune, indicating that that any marriage that you would have would either go through 3 different phases of Sun, Uranus, Neptune, or ultimately it could show 3 different partners of Sun, Uranus, Neptune.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
So there's much that can be said, and of course, off the top of my head, it's difficult to say further things, and I can certainly talk with you afterwards if you prefer to do it that way as well.
We'll set up a session.
Yes. Okay.
Sounds great.
Let's do. All right. So where are we, Claire?
We also had a question here, which I thought was interesting. It's from Vasu, who's asking, what is the main difference between Vedic and Western astrology?
Well, yes. So that's, gosh, they're bringing me. So the Vedic is the, what we would call the Indian or the Eastern technique of astrology, whereas what we do here is the Western or tropical. Well, we use the tropical zodiac, whereas the Indian and Vedic people use the sidereal zodiac. Now, the difference is that with the tropical zodiac, we say that 0 Aries starts at the vernal equinox when the sun crosses the celestial equator moving north. And that's our point of reference as we go round. And every sign is then 30 degrees wide. Whereas the Vedic people who use the sidereal zodiac, which is actually how wide is the constellation of Pisces, because Pisces is way bigger than, say, Aquarius or Aries. And they have a different, so their signs are not the same width. They have some signs very wide, and I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, and some not so, but they are referencing the actual constellations up in the sky and saying, oh, look, the sun entered the constellation of Pisces, and it's going to pass through, and it's going to take it 38 days, and then it's going to enter the constellation of Aries, which is slightly shorter. But where there is a lot of question about where is the actual cusp between these two signs, because if you look at the constellations up in the sky, you're just seeing a group of stars here, that's the fish, and a group of stars here, that's the water bearer, and technically, where is the midpoint? I don't know. How do you decide that it's this point or slightly? Because these stars are not in a straight line; they're just ding, there's your thing. So that is really the main difference.
Cool.
I know. So maybe that was technical, but what I'm saying is that the work I do in it on my channel, we work with the Western tropical zodiac, for sure.
All right.
I know, right?
Looks like we have about like 2 more questions I have here.
Yes.
So Darlene was asking, which would you consider to be the most important planet in a chart?
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, and generally, the most important planet is the planet that rules the ascendant. That's also known as the chart ruler. So you would look at the sign on the ascendant and decide what is that, which planet rules that. And if we go back to our friend here of Devin, he's got Sagittarius as the ascendant. So Jupiter will be his chart ruler. And you would tend to look at that planet within his chart and say, how is this Jupiter placed? And let's have a look at it, ladies. Where is it? In Libra, conjoined Mars in the 10th house. Squaring a couple of other planets and making a quincunx to the moon. So for him, so far, we would want to say that Jupiter is most likely to be the strongest planet. However, we do know that Mercury is in its own sign, is most elevated, and is probably the final dispositor, because I haven't had time to calculate the dispositor tree, but I think that might be the case. Any comments on that, ladies? Oh no, it's not, because Saturn's in Aquarius. So Jupiter's pretty strong there in Libra, right? But typically you would say that the planet that rules the ascendant is more likely to be the strongest planet than other planets. Devin, good for you. You've got Jupiter. This is a planet that rules growth, expansion, overextending yourself, having a big eye, seeing the big picture, and yeah, a lot of other things that go along with Sagittarius. So, but keywords are growth, that during the course of your life, growth should occur, and it probably will. Yeah. Was that clear to Claire?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. So
ascendant ruler.
Huh?
Ascendant ruler.
Yeah, the ascendant ruler. So let me ask you, Dianne, what is your ascendant ruler?
My ascendant ruler is Mars.
And how's Mars for you? Do you feel that Mars?
Oh, you bet. Makes me pushy. There you go.
There you go.
I have pretty good drive.
Drive and pushy. Keywords for Mars, right?
Yeah. So
I tend to mute myself because I, off the top of my head, very dangerous. My ascendant's Pisces, so my chart ruler is Jupiter, Neptune as the modern ruler, and Jupiter as a traditional ruler. So that makes me a highly intuitive person, I would say, very connected to water and all things fluid, and generally doing things for the greater good. That is a lot of who I am. Yes.
That's very interesting. And of the two, between Jupiter and Neptune, which planet would you say you resonate with easilier? Is that a word? More easily?
Well, I mean, it's anybody who knows anything about Neptune, it's hard to resonate with Neptune. I have to say that Jupiter is quite strong in my chart and has been quite significant in my own personal development, I would say. But Neptune has also been really significant. I'm just thinking in my heart, I've got 2 T-squares, both involved in different ways. Neptune is also quite significant. I don't know if I could, I think that in my study of astrology, I've gotten more connected to Neptune, whereas before Jupiter would be just easy to find because it's quite a prominent planet, where Neptune is nebulous, people. It's what it is.
You can't put your finger on it.
Hard to figure out.
Yeah. So in this case, what we have is that because Norma's has a particular sign, which is Pisces on the ascendant, Pisces has 2 rulers. So she has to consider 2 planets that could potentially be strongest planets within her chart. With Dianne, with Aries rising, it's Mars, end of story. You know, that's it. And the same with Devin there too. Yeah. And we see Claire's got Scorpio rising. So again, that is a sign with 2 planetary rulers. There's Mars as the traditional ruler, and that's the push and shove. And then the Pluto is the Scorpio ruler, and that's, you know, yeah, that can be a pushy too. So it can come over as yeah.
Well, you know what I like to say about Scorpio?
What's that?
That they will kill for you, or they will kill you. It's one or the other. All I'm saying.
That's a very good one. Yeah, yeah.
The tail. That's awesome.
Yeah, no comment from Scorpio. Okay. Do we have any more questions there?
What about you, Alison?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got, where is it? Yeah, Ascendant Leo. Therefore, my Ascendant ruler is the Sun. And that means that the Sun rule is typically it's expected to be the strongest ruler the strongest planet in my chart. And actually it is. It is also first house in Leo. So it's got a double whammy, triple whammy kind of feel about it. And it's just this energy of creativity, cheerful, I would like to say, most of the time, not moody, you know, and that kind of thing. Yeah. But I do like to kind of do my own thing, I must say. It's a little independent there, but that's how that comes over. Thank you for asking.
Alison, I did have another question for you, and maybe for Norma and Dianne as well, how you'd view this. How would you say modern technology has changed astrology?
And that can maybe also link to the final question where I had Hanya was asking about astrology software, and what would you suggest?
Yeah, I think with astrology software, it's brought it much more mainstream. You know, they can get an app like Astro Gold or Solar Fire on their PC, and boom, they've got an astrology chart up and running in minutes. I don't necessarily know that they know what it means, and that's where they need to take, in my opinion, take courses, you know, from Alison and things like that. But at least they've got the information at their fingertips. So I think it makes it something people can talk about a lot more than they might have before, because it was quite difficult to put together a chart the old way. It was really tricky. I thought it took forever. So I think it's making it much more mainstream.
Yeah. Norma, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. Well, I'm a Cancer. I have an opinion about everything. I agree with you, Diane. I do think it's brought it more to the forefront. Now, I have to be honest, as a mathematician, calculating by a chart by hand only just makes me happy. I do think that it does bring it much more to the forefront. I also think when I think about technology, I don't only think about the software, but also somebody like Alison, who's really tapped into YouTube and Instagram and like all the ways that we are connecting now. It's just another way for us to connect. And I think that part is fantastic. And I mean, just all of given our COVID situation, people are signing up for classes and we're learning more. And I think that's great. So I think it's a really good thing, you know, and it also
enrich the community.
You know, when I used to teach, we used to say that math was the big gatekeeper for courses and that nobody could advance any further. But now that astrology is much more accessible, it's not holding people back from learning more about astrology. So,
yeah. I do think so. I think that the accessibility, as Diane says, to Solarfire, which is a bit of a challenge, really, but it is the best software to get, but it does run on PC, which is a downfall as far as I'm concerned. But then Astro Gold, which is the app that we were referencing earlier today, everyone's got it on the iPhone. If you've got an iPhone and an iPad, you can upload this app in the blink of an eye. And as Diane says, no, it's not quite clear if you know what you're doing. But back in the day, when things were still in black and white and I learned astrology, it used to take me 5 hours to calculate by hand one chart.
Wow.
Because there was so much calculation that had to be done. And then sometimes you get to the end and say, oh yeah, no, I picked the wrong year. And you have to so but you learn what you were doing. But I don't do that anymore. I haven't hand calculated a chart in probably 10 years, and I probably never will again because I've got Astro Gold. But I do think that if you want to learn astrology, you do need to know how to hand calculate a chart, because you get a better idea of the concept of what's going into it and where all these things come from, so that you can immediately question charts that are looking a bit iffy anyway for whatever reason, because you understand where it's coming from and the basis of where these charts came from. Because if you think for the last 2,000 years, up until probably 10 years ago, you really had to do it by hand, and the Greeks and all the ancient mathematicians would have carved it out on a clay tablet, I don't really know, or drawn it on the beach or something. How they worked it out is a miracle, really. And I don't know, I only know a few people, I don't know anyone, I only know a couple of people who still calculate by hand, and such as Norma, which is great, because you get to understand what's actually happening, because you're trying to place a planet that's up there at one angle on a sphere that's moving, and you were born here, and the angle is this and that and the other, and there's so many moving parts, literally, of this whole thing, that we're trying to get a birth chart for a split second the moment you took your first breath. So to actually calculate that by hand is quite something, and kudos to Norma for continuing to push forward and doing these things, Yeah.
The only other thing I would say is that it's given astrology more of a fully scientific basis, right? Like, having the software available and be used to calculate these things by hand. I mean, it's not just, I've been telling, I've been studying now for like maybe a year and a half, and I'm telling people I'm studying to be an astrologer, and they're like, Norma, like that's hooey, fluey, airy, fairy. I said, no, it's just the planetary movements and how they affect you. It's a science, right? Yeah. So I think it has legitimized astrology in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's a great point.
The interesting thing I find when you talk to people is they have absolutely no problem identifying the moon, the full moon, and associating that with the water tides.
Yeah.
And even when you say that, all of the boat users have tide tables, so they're already using a form of astrology. And yet we're not quite ready to take the leap to go to all of the other planets. But I think it's, they're getting more and more, the people, generally the public feel to me like they're getting more open to taking that leap. I'm not sure why I feel that way, but I do. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because the actual, you still get the great Canadian almanac of when to plant your root crops and things. It's issued every year. You get it at Walmart, and it'll tell you when to sow, when to reap, when to take your top crops, when to take fruit, when to go fishing, when not to fish, and it's all to do with the position of the moon. And ultimately, if the moon's directly overhead or directly below you, you're going to get a better fishing net full of stuff. I don't know how to say that. You're going to get a better haul from if you're fishing. And by the same token, we know that if you're planting because you want things to grow, you want to plant as the moon is waxing and growing itself, and then generally you would harvest as the moon is waning. So, the farmers are still doing it. They're still planting by the moon. And you're quite right, Dianne, that this is, and the fishermen and who knows who else. But I think that's because we can see the tides and we can see the moon. And that's the difference, right? To take these other planets into human consciousness, you've really got to pay attention to look up at the sky and say, oh yeah, that's Venus, and know it's Venus. And it took me years to work this out. And you can, of course, see Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn if you know where to look. But you've really got to, as you're looking up at the sky, very often it's just a whole twinkling, and you can't tell one star from another or one constellation from the next. But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing what things are changing in that way. Yes.
And I think the other thing is there's an app called, I think it's called Skylight or Sky something or other. And you aim it at the sky and it will tell you all of the different constellations. And so I just think that it's interesting for me when I talk to people, they're perfectly supportive of the study of astronomy, which is the study of the planets, but they're less supportive of the study of astrology, which is the study of the planets and how they relate to us. So I just think people are getting a bit more open to it. Maybe it's just wishful thinking.
Yes.
Do you think it could be more tangible case studies done that would actually I don't know, but I see what you guys are saying. I think that's very good to see how it's changed astrology and made it more accessible for both astrologers and the general public alike.
Yeah.
Oh, you sound like you're, Devin, you sound like you're a little bit of a researcher, given all those planets in your 9th house. And I would recommend that you look up a guy named Gauquelin, Gauquelin. He did over 50,000 charts to look for patterns, right? So in terms of research, he is probably one of the foremost.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. A great guy. People in history, in astrology, and Gauquelin is one who stands tall above many others, actually. And if I'm not saying his name right, I apologize for that. But yeah, definitely. So some people have, Devin, to answer your question, some people have done research. Of course, it's going on all the time. But this particular guy did research probably about 100 years ago, so he's got solid research there. But ongoing research is occurring all the time with places like the NCGR, the National Council for Geocosmic Research in the USA. They are research astrologers, and they are researching the effects of, whatever, Chiron conjunct the moon, and what does it mean, and this and that, and they're going into it in great detail. They are looking and processing sample groups of, 500 charts of people who've got this or people who've got that to find these correlations as well. Yeah. So we are more able to do statistics, I suppose is the word, about astrology, and ultimately it will come out that if you're a Virgo, you're picky. It's just, we just know this, right? What can you say?
Yeah.
All jokes aside, but you know what I'm saying. It's so with the ability to do this type of research, to have the availability of particular charts to look for, and they're calling all the time. If you've got someone who's got, we're looking for charts of people with breast cancer, or we're looking for charts of people who, whatever, have 4 kids or something, and that you can send these charts to them as an astrologer and add to their database of information. And again, it's all technology. That we didn't have Excel, you'd never be able to run a database because it was all done again on chiseling away on clay tablets, But it's interesting. Awesome. It's interesting, yeah, what you say there.
Yeah, thanks you for that question.
Yes.
That was great. Yeah, that wraps up then all the questions that I have prepared, unless anyone else has any further questions for Alison or general discussion.
I'll ask a general discussion question.
Yes.
What do we think about the coronavirus, and when do we think it's going to subside, or do you think it's going to go on forever?
No, I don't think it'll go on forever. I think that it's personally, I think that it's coming up as we've got this Saturn-Pluto connection we're currently having, and you often find that, let me just get today's chart up, you often find that when Saturn and Pluto come together, there are peaks, because they only come together for the conjunctions, the sextiles, the squares, the trines, and so on. So there are quite a lot of gaps, and even if you go back, you can correlate it back to Ebola and to, was it antivirus or something, and then the Spanish flu, and there is some correlation to this. So ultimately, as that Saturn-Pluto breaks, which it is doing now, all the planets have transited past Pluto. Mars and Saturn are now in Aquarius, easing this pressure. So in a way, I'd like to say we've hit the peak, and the curve will just flatten naturally anyway. But I don't think it will ever just go away. I think it's with us now, because that's just the nature of viruses in general. Wouldn't you say, Dianne? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to have, I think we've just passed the peak here. I'm not really doing it with astrology. I'm just sort of doing it for how it feels. And I think in the summer it will subside a bit, but I think it might come back in the fall.
Okay.
I think we're going to see massive societal changes from it. We're seeing employers, have people working from home, and they're seeing the work be done equally as efficient or better, right? Yeah. With that, why will they need to pay rent on these huge buildings that they have all their workers for? Why are they going to pay travel costs for their employees? Why are they going to host these large conferences when we're able to achieve stuff like this through Zoom, right? So I think we're going to see a massive shift in what society is as a whole, maybe. I don't think we're going to ever go back to normal, because I think we're creating a new normal from here.
I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, new era.
Yeah.
And everybody would say that the astrology supports that, right? I mean, Pluto is the planet of transformation and of letting go what doesn't work, so that new and better ways, like the new normal that everybody's talking about, that is totally Pluto energy. I agree. I think we are, given that Saturn has moved on into Aquarius, things are easing. But let's remember that Saturn is going retrograde and coming back into Capricorn. So there are the 3 planets that are in stellium, I call it, they're pairwise conjunctions. And so they've been pairing off 5 times from the end of December until December 2020. So we still have at least 2, well, I got to double check. I think we've got 2 more times that there is going to be connections, exact connections between these planets. One happens, I believe it's in November, and then the last one is in December. And so, yes, I agree. I think, and also looking at the exponential graphs, which, trust me, Norma's just having a great time self-isolating. I'm so happy right now. Can't even tell you. But the numbers show that, where our rate of infection is slowing globally, but also here in BC. But I think we are going to have a second wave that's going to come back. And so I agree with everybody that the numbers show that, and the astrology, I think, also supports that, the general easing. But I agree with you, Devin, that things will never be the same again. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that our society, personal opinion, has been going down a path where there's been a lot of this division of the have and the have-nots. And this has become, a new way for us to be much more intentional about how we connect. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I agree. I'll add to it by, you'll see people putting out that they're enjoying this lifestyle more. They're seeing cleaner air. They're seeing, more good quality time spent with their families, more animals out. I don't think we'll go back to what we were previously. And we're in generally a time of heavy friction, really. As you said, we're divided. And I think more divided than we've been since times of, war, really, at that point. So we're heading into a very dark path, and this might have given us what we need to kind of build back those relationships to, see each other as equals again, instead of kind of the everyone for themselves lifestyle that we're heading towards.
Yeah, good points. Yeah.
Well, and I've heard a number of quotes. I mean, it's the end of the handshake. That's gone. Like literally the end of the hand. Like imagine no more shaking. Like we're going to find a different way to greet and be around people. But also I've heard, it's the end of neoliberalism. This is not necessarily my opinion, but the idea that we're in a crisis. And who did we turn to? We turned to government, and we turned to society, and we turned to nonprofit. We did not turn to the private sector to help us out. And I think that's a huge commentary on, our society in general. We can be as critical of the US as we want, but I mean, we are so blessed here in this country to have the support of our government. I mean, I think, universal basic income, baby, it is coming because we've just shown that we can have the financial wherewithal to absolutely do it. So, and my work, I'm a life coach. And so most of my work deals with helping people find their life purpose. And so with a universal basic income, then people are freed up to do what they're actually meant to be doing on this planet, not worried about safe housing, safe food, safe, right? And that, again, just my opinion, but I think it's going to be a good thing.
All right, well then I'm going to wrap it up, and I want to thank you all for attending this first Ask Me Anything, and it was so great to have you, and you've all had some great questions. We had some great questions from our people who were going to be there, but anyway, they put their questions in beforehand. Of course, I'd be interested to see if we want to do AMAs, Ask Me Anythings in the future, or whether it makes more sense to astrologically have more of a focused chat. Maybe there's a chat about Venus in the pipeline or something like that, or do we like the free what's the word I'm looking for?
Free flow.
The free flow of questions and ideas. But I really do appreciate you all attending. It's been super great having you here. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice seeing you
Nice
guys.
meeting you guys.
Nice meeting you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good
one.
day.
So there it is. We did quite a bit. We covered quite a few questions there. There's some were quite complicated, some were what I want to say beginner questions, but I do believe we covered the broad spectrum of astrology questions that most people are asking, and this is why I'm doing these Ask Me Anythings. I do put notifications on Instagram when I'm going to be hosting an Ask Me Anything, and if you want to participate, you can let me know there as well. I'm Alison Price. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.